MX-5 came on. So quite well. Tank is running on fumes, but I did 630 kilometers, which is awesome. And I'm releasing. So if you are very gently, you can do a lot. 98 is going in. Almost €2.20 at least. But this is not running it spiritedly, but just running it gently. And let's see how many liters we need. I think over 30. Easily. Still going. 30, 31, 32, that's it. 32.6. So another foundering car, and today we will discuss 35 years of Mazda MX-5, Mazda Miata, Mazda Urus Roadster. It's all the same, different names for different markets. And why is this so special? I ask you one thing. Can you imagine sports cars that have a history of 35 years continuously? There are some. So one example is the Mazda MX-5, Miata, Urus Roadster, but the other one is the 911 from Porsche, and from Chevrolet you have the Corvette, for example. Yeah? But they are very limited. Even if you look at brand names like Lotus for the Elise, they are not there for 35 years. Same with Esprit, not 35 years. If I'm thinking this through, this is quite a feature. And the other thing is, if you look at the 911 or the Corvette, they are not cars for everyone, every day, but the Mazda MX-5, Miata, Urus Roadster, but if I say MX-5, it is applied to all those variants, of course, for different markets. And the thing is, it is accessible. So even on the entry-level sports car, you will find this fine vehicle. And the power range from, I think, in the beginning 90 horsepower at the lowest iteration, to now 186 horsepower, which is quite a lot. And almost all Mazda MX-5s had a naturally aspirated engine. There were some specials, the Mazda Speed versions, for example, they had a turbo, I think a 1.8 turbo. So they also keep that original sense lively. It's even more special if you consider that Lotus Elan is like an ancestor to the Mazda MX-5. So Lotus stopped producing the Elan, and Mazda took over that candle with a car that's really, especially the first generation, the NA generation, looked apart, but a little bit more roomy, a little bit easier to drive, so more accessible, cheaper, and a lot more reliable. So now you have a car that is a sports car that's as reliable as your runabout, like a Mazda 3. And in the beginning they called them the 323, and now they call it the Mazda 3. But it's very interesting that you could have a car with quite similar running costs, albeit being a lot more sporty, a lot more fun. And what makes the Mazda MX-5 so much fun and still makes it so much fun, it's quite easy because it is a car that has rear-wheel drive. It has double wishbone setup, so both in front and in the back. And a double wishbone is a setting that you see in the past also with manufacturers like Honda for Civics and Accords. But an accessible car, this is quite a special feat to consider. But it had it, and it still does. And even if you compare it now to, for example, the GT86 or GR86, the next evolution thereof of Toyota, they don't have that very nice, sophisticated setup that the Mazda MX-5 does have. So in its principle, it is a more elite car in the components. That being said, you might get a better deal if you're after rear-wheel drive fun with a Toyota GR86 than with a Mazda MX-5 if you consider it for the euros or dollars spent. But that's not a consideration because Toyota is an enormous player with enormous amounts of money and parts available. And now with that new head Toyota, they are also reintroducing driving pleasure. And driving pleasure is something that the Mazda MX-5 oozes of. So it's a very capable package. It's also looking a lot prettier. I really like the Mazda MX-5, the current generation, the ND. I like it over all the other generations. I understand that the NA has a classical beauty like the Renault Ceylon with also the pop-up headlights. But I like the more aggressive stance of the ND, which is also a little bit wider. And they had reintroduced lightness. So the NC was a little bit heavier. The NB was just a very heavy workaround of the NA, you could say. So just a little bit heavier, but a lot better. And then came the NC. And when the NC was there, still my heart was with the NB. So the second generation. But the ND, it's a home run. So they have kept the 2-liter engine there, but even more horsepower now in the latest iteration from 160, where the ND started with and was also in the NC, to now 186, but it's lighter. It's as light as the NA and B with all the new technology fitted with. It's a masterpiece. I'm now sitting in Suzuki Swift Sport of the third generation of the Swift Sport, and this is the lightest of all with better technology, more power, etc, etc. So this is also the reason why I bought this one instead of a car that becomes heavier and heavier with each iteration. And it's fantastic because all the safety features are in there, but still it's lighter. And that lightness is in the mantra of Lotus. Colin Chapman, he said, add lightness. So by keeping things simple, if possible, you could have a car that is very nimble, good acceleration because of the lightness, but also good braking, good turning capacity. And all those things will also mean less wear and tear. You don't need as big of components because the lightness is still quite humble. If you consider this, the thing is, he said, if you want a car that is fast in a straight line at horsepower or torque, that's what gets the car going. But if you want to have a car that's fast everywhere, have it light. So a light car still accelerates faster with the same horsepower than a heavier car. This is simple. It also brakes better than a car with similar brakes and is heavier. That's also simple. It also turns better because it's lighter than a similar car that is heavier. That's all so simple, but it also will result in less wear and tear, less fuel consumption, less maintenance, less replacements, and all those things are very important. And then you have the Netherlands that punish you if you have a heavy car. So you get road tax, for example, based on the weight of your car. So they tax you based on the weight of the car. So if the car is lighter, you also get less tax, which is a benefit in itself. And if you look at insurance companies, there are two components. One is the components to protect the car and to get that reimbursed if you have damages, your own car. And the other one is for your environment. So for example, if you hit another car, it depends how much damage will you do to the other car at a maximum. So if you have a lighter car, also those taxes for the insurance taxes or the insurance cost, it's not a tax, it's a cost, but it is also not something that you can just have optional. You are obliged to have at least the coverage for your environment if you do something wrong there. So it's very, very interesting that all those things combined make a car so much cheaper to run and more fun as a result. So therefore I really love light cars, and the Mazda MX-5 is a lot lighter than a Corvette or the 911. The Corvette and 911 will give you goosebumps in all kinds of different ways, or a real sports cars. The MX-5 is more of an entry-level sports car. But hey, here's a sports car there to give you the best performance. Then it is not your pick. This is the sports car that gives you fun. And that is always giving that a sporting nudge. This is also not a sports car, this is Suzuki Swift, but this is a car that gives you fast A to B transport. Yeah, the Mazda MX-5 can also do that. But also involves you and gives you a lot of smiles per mile. And that is where this little car, the Suzuki Swift Sport, but also Mazda MX-5 is shining. So you have a car that does not perform at top level, of course, like a 911 and Corvette do, but it does give you a lot of fun. And that is a very big benefit in itself, especially in the modern society, and I will explain why. Because you still have the fun, as with that faster cars, but there is a trick. And the trick is, because that fun, you can still rev the engine and work through the gears without going stupidly fast on the public roads. So you don't need to go to a circuit to really exploit the chassis and still have quite a lot of fun. Of course, on the circuit you can go a little bit further, but then those 911s and Corvettes will be faster, of course. The other thing is, because doing so you can have fun or exploit like 8/10 of the potential a lot more than you could do with a 911 or that Corvette, which you will probably most of the time that you have 8 out of 10 amount of how you say that reserves or levels covered. You will have perhaps only 4 out of 10 with the 911, which is very capable, very fast, or that Corvette. So even at mundane speeds you will have a lot more involvement, and that's something that a lot of cars are lacking of. So also the Mazda MX-5, of course, is an open car, convertible, roadster, whatever ticks your box. They have different varieties as well. Some even come as more of a fastback, that you still have the end remaining, and then you have this roof be electronically or otherwise like a Targa, that you can remove pieces of it. And that's very nice. And there are also some competitors, of course. There was Fiat Barchetta, but only one generation and very limited. You have the Mazda, I think it is AZ Roadster, that also has, but it was a K car, and also only one generation, was originally a Suzuki Sciarra. The Cappuccino was there, but also from Mazda, but also only one generation. And you have, of course, Toyota with midship Roadster 2 Citroën, the MR2 as we call it, or some markets call it the MRS. But it's only a few generations. I think they had 3 real generations, but never continuously 35 years, as it was the case with the Mazda MX-5. So they cover quite a big lifespan, but not as long as the Mazda MX-5 and not as continuously. It's still the halo car. And another thing I really like about Mazda is that they keep producing this little Mazda MX-5. I also like it with Suzuki, that they keep producing the Swift And they had a little bit discontinuation because they had the Ignis, which was called the Swift still in Japan, to cover it, and now they have the Ignis and Swift next to each other, and the Swift is back. But the Swift Sport, for example, they promised that they would bring another Swift Sport, but they will not bring it for the European markets. I think the Mazda MX-5, the new iteration, will still be brought to the European markets, but it's becoming a costly little beast altogether, so that's a pity. In the Netherlands, for a new Mazda MX-5, it's not a weird thing that you have to pay 40,000 euros. Yeah, you heard me correctly, 40,000 euros, and you don't get a well-spec'd one at that. You get an entry-level Mazda MX-5, which is stupendous. In all-time money, when we still had the guldens in the Netherlands, that would be almost 90,000 guldens. In the past, you could buy a house for that. And this little guy, the Suzuki Swift, is now 30,000 euros new, the Swift Sport, and I bought it a few years ago for 25,000 euros. So it's getting more costly and more costly because, especially because in the Netherlands, you get a CO2 tax. So new cars are taxed to get a penalty based on the amount of CO2 that they could use per 100 kilometers or 1,000 kilometers, whatever. But that is a very big pity for a lot of driving enthusiasts. For example, on a new 911, you will not be hard pressed that you will find that a new 911 you will have like 70, 60, 70, 80,000 perhaps. 80,000, 60 to 80,000 or even more additional taxes based on the CO2 that they could propel into the atmosphere, which is quite stupendous. For the 80,000 euros you could even buy 2 MX-5s, including that tax. So it's all relatively, but it is a big thing, because I started this video that the Mazda MX-5 Miata Urus Roadster was an accessible car, and in many markets it's still quite accessible. Of course, there is indexation, and that makes things a lot more costly. But in the Netherlands we have so enormous additional costs layered on top of that, that it's making a lot of cars inaccessible. So if the cost of living is already very high compared to a lot of other countries, and the wages are not higher than other countries that are of the similar Western society, but you have enormous costs to buy a car and to maintain it, maintenance costs, but also fuel is extremely expensive here, and then you have the insurance costs, which are also a lot higher, because they have to take into consideration as well that additional tax, if they want to replace it. It will make it very hard. Also, if you want to park a car in the Netherlands, oftentimes you have to have parking fees, and those parking fees are also insane, extremely expensive. So all in all, it makes it a lot harder to drive a car. But you could also turn it around. If you buy a car for 20,000 euros, for example, and you still have to pay the same road tax, as I mentioned in my introduction, or same parking tax as you would do with a Mazda MX-5, it's a lot more fun and costs twice the amount to begin with, and it might be even relatively cents cheaper. In the total cost of ownership, that would place a smaller dent in relative sense, in absolute sense the same, than a cheaper car. So cheap car or expensive car, some parts are similar in cost. So that's something to consider as well. I really like the Mazda MX-5 because it's very playful. So you have rear wheel drive, so the car is pushing you instead of pulling you. Let's say this car is a front wheel drive car, and it gives a different sensation. Being pushed feels a lot different than being pulled, and also the intendance, the intonation, or the, how do you say this? Intention of the car, that's the word I was searching for. The intention of the car is more to go to oversteer instead of understeer. And the front wheel drive car is more directed to understeer. It is basic. But now with all this modern trickery, they also have like electronic limited slip differentials, etc. So it's just electronic aids or helpers that can make your car turn in a lot nicer, even if you have a front wheel drive car. And on the other way, they make rear wheel drive cars a lot safer, because of course with oversteer you have a bigger chance of accidents, and that is then be taken care of by other safety features. So of course in some cars, especially enthusiast cars, you are able to turn those things off if you would like to, which makes the Mazda MX-5 a very playful little thing. Yes, indeed. And that is still very fun, but a lot of times people keep that safety features on, or even if you start up the new car new, it is on as a standard default. So it takes a little bit away of the playful nature. And of course you can push through all the buttons or work your way to the menu and still solve it. Yes, you can, but it's are additional things that you need to do to access that playful nature. And the front wheel drive setup gives you a lot more space and practicality, which I like more than a rear wheel drive setup, to be honest. I'm not saying that the rear wheel drive setup is not very much fun, because it is, but a front wheel drive lightweight car is also extremely fun. And keep into consideration that you can have a car that is lighter if you have a front wheel drive setup, because you have less parts that are part of the driving system. And the less parts that you have, the lesser things that add weight or draw away power, parasitic loss they call that. So you generate power at the engine, but for example with the Mazda MX-5 you have a drive shaft that goes through the entire length of the car to get the power from the front, where the engine is sitting, to the rear, where the wheels are being driven. And then at the rear they propel the wheels to be pushing you. Whereas with the front wheel drive setup, it's the engine in front, but also the driven wheels are in front. So you have a lot less components, a lot less weight, and a lot less channels that you have to channel through, so that it improves the power being given to the wheel, so you have less losses, but also reduces friction. So if you want to go the same speed, you have a better fuel economy, and you have a lot more room because you don't have a tunnel going through your car, and that intrusion is being left, and therefore you have a car that is optimal in my sense. Also, please keep in mind that the front wheel drive car was a later evolvement as compared to the rear wheel drive car. And why do you think they placed that engine at the front? Because they have cooling. They want to have the driving wind, the air flow, cool the engine with the radiator in the past, but also now for intercoolers. This is something that is of importance. So even a Porsche 911, which has the engine at the back and also the wheels being driven at the back, has those cooling components at the front, and also has some additional gills to cool down the engine. So the engine at the front is not a bad thing. Another thing to take into consideration, also when the engine in the front, you have more protection because the highest chance that you come into contact with another car or an object is from the front, because you drive that direction. So it also offers additional safety features. So if the engine is already at the front, then you can have a car that is being driven with the front wheels in the optimal sense. Also, if you have a car with rear wheel drive, the engine has to be placed in the longitudinal direction to drive it, the rear wheels, whereas it can place in this direction if you drive the front wheel. So the car can be a lot more compact, so also lighter there, and more simple. And also you can have shorter overhangs, so that the room in front of the front wheels and at the back and after the rear wheels can be reduced, and that reduction gives also a lot more playful nature. Therefore, the standard recipe of a Hothatch is front wheel drive. And Hothatches are very, very fun car. I will tell you that. If you only are allowed to have one car, then a Hothatch will be a very good bet. Also, a Powerstation wagon is a very good bet. Even more practical, even more roomier. A little bit less playful because the additional bulk can also be a lot more powerful. The thing is, of course, that a Powerstation is more costly to begin with than a Hothatch is. But those are the most practical driver cars that there are if you only are limited to one car. If you have multiple options, of course, a Ferrari or a Porsche or whatever could be a very good bet. But this little car weighs a lot less than the Porsche 911, but offers 5 seating arrangements for even 5 adults at a pinch, whereas you will be hard pressed to put 4 persons into a Porsche, because at the back you have at the front you will sit very nicely, so the 2 at the front are very great, but it's a 2+2 instead of a 5-seater. So 2 seats at the front. It's also not a 4-seater because it's 2+2, but at the back there are compromised seats, so they are very short, a little bit leg room, and also limited at the headroom. So as a result, it's more suited for children instead of adults. It's not suited for adults. But this little car weighs a lot less, offers 5 adults space at a pinch, and offers very nice performance. Not as nice as the 911, of course, but you can exploit this to 8 or 9, 10, whereas the 911, the same speed, you will only be driving 4 out of 10. So in the real life, what is the more fun car? Of course, there are bragging rights by owning and driving a Porsche. I get that, you're right, but it's a little bit different type of consideration altogether, in my opinion. And if that's something that really suits you, get the 911. I personally drove a 911 on the TT circuit in Essen, and it was mesmerizing. GT3 RS, and this might be even the best driving 911 of them all. 911 Turbo and Turbo S, and perhaps also GTS, and especially GT2 are extremely powerful and also very capable. But that naturally aspirated engine that's sitting in the 911 GT3 is a dream. It revs to 9,000 plus RPMs, and it sounds fantastic. It also, because it is more simple, it doesn't have turbos and all those other components, it's a lot lighter. Because it is lighter, even with the same brakes, it would brake harder, of course. As I mentioned again, the 911 with the Mazda MX-5, which is also a light, naturally aspirated car. So enough of Hothatch, you're more on the supercars, sports cars. But the thing is with the Mazda MX-5, it is a car that is very friendly. A lot of people like it, like them. You also have a very broad public being involved. Some of them are quite rich, but still have a 911 next to, for example. They still have a Mazda MX-5 next to, for example, 911 or Bentley or whatever, just to have some fun. Or a car for the wife or for the children. That is playful and nice and still is modern. It doesn't cost the world. But also people that have saved for 10 or more years to get their Mazda MX-5, but still accessible. If you take that, if you're willing to make the sacrifice, you can still also, if you're at a budget, get a Mazda MX-5. Either being the first generation, which is now climbing in value again because it's becoming a classic, or the NB and C generation, or even the newest one. It depends, and even if you're saving for 10 years, of course the ND that is still being sold as a new car before the new generation comes, will come into your vision as well, your scope, because prices will decrease. That being said, Mazda MX-5 prices are very stable. If you compare to different type of cars, it costs the same at the time of delivery. And why is that? Because it is a driving enthusiast type of car. So a lot of people want to own one. So there's quite a lot of demand, even though that there is a lot of offering of these models as well. So for a sports car, there's a lot of cars also on the second-hand market, occasion market of the Mazda MX-5 type, which is great, which offers you a lot of choices for colors, interior, whatever you want, specifications. And also some people are modding them, and especially in the USA you see a lot of people modding them with superchargers or other bolt-ons. And they even have parties like BBR that are specialized at making the Mazda MX-5 even a better performer. So they have plug and play kits, as they call them. Of course you still need to do some things to make it work the way it should, but it's quite straight on. You don't have to source all components and try things out, because they already have developed something that you can just use, which is a very nice thing. I appear to have a cold. This time I'm happy that I'm not sitting into a convertible, but I'm driving this little Hothatch. But the Mazda MX-5, I hope it will live on as long as possible, because it's a really charming little car. And also girls, wives, daughters, they like this type of car. So it's not only a boy's car. In the past they said it was a girl's car or a hairdresser car. This is just people being silly. Of course it doesn't have the raw performance, but as I mentioned, it's there for the fun, and that's its strong point. It really is such a good fun car. It is the benchmark, in my opinion, if you want an entry-level sports car. You want it to be close to the fun of the Mazda MX-5. Are there alternatives? Yes, there are at this time, but they are a lot more costly. So if you don't regard the GR86, which is at the same price level and has a little bit better performance in some areas, but does not have that open roof. And then you also have the Alpine A110, also a lightweight, perhaps 10 to 50% heavier, which is still quite a lot, but also a lot more performance is there, a lot more power, 1.8 turbo engine. And you also have the Cayman of Porsche, which is an entry-level sports car made by Porsche, which is a lot better in performance everywhere. And if you want to have the open road feeling, you could go for the Boxer, which is an open roof variety of the Cayman as we know it now. I think they called 718. As coupe and roadster spider, something like that. Those are good candidates. The Elise is no longer in production, to also be a very good candidate, but also more costly. Alpine is more costly, Porsche is a lot more costly, but also the Lotus is more costly. So you're very hard pressed to have that silver lock between affordability, reliability, and still driving fun. There, as such, the Mazda MX-5 is unchallenged at the moment, which gives you a good indication. And you could say that the GR86 offers the same level of driving fun and a lot more practicality. And you would be right, because you still have a 4-seater. Could also be a 2+2, but a little bit more room than in the 911. So that is a lot more practical, but it doesn't come with an open roof. And the open roof gives you that feeling of fun a lot more, because the wind is pulling your hair, you have direct access to sunlight, and you can feel, smell, hear things differently. Also there was the Copen. I have the Datsun Copen, which is a front wheel drive roadster type of car, real roadster as well, but comes with an aluminium roof that is electrically being applied, which is a lot better than the soft top variety that's normal in the Mazda MX-5. And it is a lot lighter again. As I mentioned, a front wheel drive car roadster can be lighter. Because this lighter, it can do with a smaller engine, smaller brakes, and still be performing very nicely. But that's, again, it will come back in the future as a competitor to the Mazda MX-5. In the past it was more of a K car, so a competitor to the AZ1, sorry for that running nose. But that's something to take into consideration. That might be a good option, but still it is not the same. It is just not the same. It will be heavier as well in the next generation, so closer to that of the Mazda MX-5, also more powerful. I really hope that it will beat the performance of the Mazda MX-5, because if so, not because I want the Mazda MX-5 to be beaten, but if you can beat the benchmark, that will result in more nice cars to be had. And the Hothatch is not longer being offered in the Netherlands, so it's not for us. For us people in the Netherlands, perhaps a lot of European markets is also withdrawn. But it is a nice car, and I have the original version, first generation, but also the European spec. So also again with the 1.3 liter that they are now putting into the new one, already fitted, and the left-hand drive. So this steering wheel at a good location for European market, and that's a great thing. I wish you a lot of pleasure. I also hope that there are plethora of Mazda MX-5, Miata, Ernest Roadster enthusiasts on the roads, because it really makes the roads a pleasant experience. And there are nice drivers as well, often quite capable, because they know how to play with this type of cars, which is quite playful. And also putting driving pleasure first. Have a great day. Ciao! This founding car regards artificial intelligence. And what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is that, as the name implies, it offers additional intelligence measures. So more variables, data are taken into consideration. And it is not natural, like humans have natural intelligence, that you have, for example, more humans looking at the problem, but it is artificially. So robots, cameras, PCs, etc. That's more the artificial flavor. Algorithms especially. So algorithms is a software component that does a lot of calculations and compares things, and that gives you information. So artificial intelligence is a source of applied information, so like real intelligence, wisdom, so to say, and it could offer a lot of beneficial factors, for example for medical care, safety, etc., etc. But it can also offer a lot of detrimental effects, like a police state, lack of freedom, things to consider. And one might offer that if you do nothing wrong, you have nothing to be afraid of. But for example, in China, they combine the artificial intelligence, so the video system that they have, and artificial intelligence that takes all things into consideration, couples that to your identity, to a social credit system. And a social credit system, for example, allows you or disallows you, so prohibits you for having access to a lot of things. And the only thing that you can do that is available to everyone to again increase your social credit score to a beneficial one, more beneficial one, is to do free labor. So that also introduced slavery then to, for example, the state, so to say. And if that is a just way of doing things, if that would be a just way of doing things, some people would still say, yeah, but if you do nothing wrong, you have a perfect social credit system. But that's not always the case, because also in the past, that algorithm can be tweaked and can be used and can be changed every year to further make people obey you, nudge to you. So for example, if you're of a different religion, that could have an impact or will have an impact on your social credit system if that is not the religion that the state wants you to have. Or you might be of a different ethnicity or from a different family. All things that could have a negative impact on you personally. So please take it into consideration. Beneficial things could be, for example, artificial intelligence to detect diseases. It could be beneficial for you personally so that you have a faster way of dealing with the disease, or a better way and more information for the doctor to cure you, to also have the intelligence of, for example, the whole network of people. Also artificial intelligence could be used to have robots cure you. That way perhaps you need a smaller hole, or they can just use the existing infrastructure, so for example your veins, to have an intervention done. It's not only artificial intelligence, it can also be done without artificial intelligence. Of course, it's still someone human to conduct that. But also safety, like for example what we have now in cars, lane keeping assist, intelligence braking system to avoid collision, camera systems that you can also look at, and that also have, for example, a radius of turning. That could help you, but also in buses. You see this in planes. Autopilot, as we know it, is of course also artificial intelligence working. You have a navigation system that shows you the best way to reach a certain location, and even if there is an obstruction or something else going on, it just finds its way again. If you go another route or you miss an entry point, it still will help you to solve it on a later stage, which is of course excellent. A very big improvement that we have such technology at this moment. And same can be used to optimize, for example, the room temperature. An intelligent system is there in place. Battery management systems to optimize that. So a lot of things are beneficial with artificial intelligence, but the thing is, they are now also making it and applying it for things that could be contra beneficial for the human species, especially in general. It could be that some people will still have very big benefits from it. China, I think their artificial intelligence system combined with the social credit score is also named Skynet, and Skynet is, for those movie enthusiasts, the system that takes over the world and tries to destroy all humankind in the Terminator series. And that was a point that said, please be aware that not all artificial intelligence and robotic progress that's being steered by artificial intelligence is beneficial. It was already a look into the future, what could happen if we would not think about it. Also Elon Musk, which has the Neuralink system in place, warns us against the drawbacks of artificial intelligence. Other big giants like Facebook, they use our data, metadata, therefore it's also now called Meta, that entire group, to look at what we want, what are our preference, but also to nudge us, to direct us to different preference, thereby you get advertisements that are tailored to you, but also advertisements that they want you to be tailored to. So instead of just offering something, they also want to influence you. And that is a tricky thing to consider. So I hope this helps. Foundry Car out. So another Foundry Car. Today we will discuss Hothatches and the best drivetrain. Will it be a mid-engine rear-wheel drive like the Clio with the 6-cylinder, for example, or would it be a front-engine rear-wheel drive like BMW 130i, or would it be front engine, front wheel drive, like for example the Suzuki Swift Sport that I'm driving currently. So, first things first, I start with the worst, Clio V6. So this car was very nice, that it has more of a really sports car configuration, so very playful, which was very nice. But why is this then the worst? If you compare it with the Clio 2-liter 60-volt front wheel drive, Clio RS, the regular one, it was only marginally faster. How could that be the case? Because it was so much heavier, because the big engine that they used and the wider tires. So it had like 250 horsepower, while the Clio RS had 172 to 182 horsepower of that generation. I think that the best Clio V6 had 265 horsepower out of the 3-liter engine. So nice, but it was also quite heavy for a Hothatch. So that would take into consideration a lot. A heavy car means that you need more horsepower to have similar performance. And the Clio RS was very light. A lightweight car means that you need a lot less horsepower for similar performance. Also, if you would compare it, you could strip the Clio RS even a lot more and then make it a lot lighter to have similar seating arrangement, because this was Clio RS is normally a 5-seater and the Clio V6 was normally a 2-seater. Always 2-seater, because in the mid there is the engine sitting, so you're losing seating capacity. You only have a 2-seater, which is not a Hothatch in my opinion, and it's a very big problem. And the second very big problem is that you have a car that cannot have room to take stuff with you, so the practical part. You cannot fold down the rear seats and have a very big access. It was very limited because the engine is sitting there. So you have all the drawbacks in place. And that's a thing compared to, again, additional complexity for a car that is not overly powerful. That's not such a big thing in my opinion. So that's the worst. The second worst, and this could be controversial, is a front engine rear wheel drive, 130i, 135i, 140i, that are the main contestants. So BMW fanboys, be aware. I have a friend who has a 130i, 265 horsepower, top version, naturally aspirated, quite light, very good performance, very good horsepower, even up there with the turbo boys like the Focus ST, and a lot more power than the normal naturally aspirated boys like the Clio RS at that time. Or for example the Civic Type R. It was on par with the 2-liter turbo of the Megane RS. A little bit less torque, but more horsepower. So very cool car. Also very playful, not too heavy. And with a car that is being rear wheel driven, you feel a push. So you feel yourself being pushed instead of being pulled, like with a front wheel drive car. But why then would I still say, okay, have a front wheel drive car? Because that's the last one available. But I have a bonus one with a 4-wheel drive car. Like for example, Lancia Delta Integrale. So that will be my bonus. The thing is that when you make power at the front and you push that through a tunnel with a cardan axle to the back. Yes? And that has benefits, a little bit more playful, so less understeer, more oversteer. But that's also being counted more and more because of electronics and safety requirements. So the playfulness of the rear-wheel drive cars are being squashed, and that of the front-wheel drive car are exploited more and more, because there was still a lot of safety margin to be exploited. So you have that tunnel. So power is made at one end and used at the other end. So that means that you have additional parts, being that tunnel and that axle and an axis at the rear. But you still need the engine at the front to be cooled. The best way to be cooled. So you don't have any room on the trunk, and you don't have any room in the interior to that axle. And you have a driving axle, so the cardan axle driving it to the back, and then you have a driving axle that's also intruding a little bit in your trunk. So those are all compromised. Also, you need a longer nose with looks pretty and more sporting, a little bit more. There's a big engine under there. It must be there. And why is that the hood so long? Because you cannot place an engine like this when you have front wheel drive, because it's directly sitting above the axle. You have to place it like this because you have rear wheel drive, because it first has to be transferred to the back, in this direction, to that drive shaft, and then only then it will be transferred to the other direction again. So that's that. A lot less room. So the 130i of my friend has similar interior space, which is, while it is a class bigger and higher and fatter and heavier as a result than this Swiss Sport of this generation, ZC33S. So you're losing interior space, that's going down, weight is going up, complexity is going up. You will also lose horsepower and fuel consumption. So fuel consumption, you have more friction, more parts, and horsepower, because also there's a parasitic loss to the drivetrain, so you don't have as much efficient horsepower going to the wheels. You have the benefit of more playfulness, and if you accelerate hard, especially at low speeds, you will transfer weight to the back, because your nose comes up and the back dives down, so you squat down on the wheels that have the ability to transfer the power, so that's beneficial for traction. But under wrong conditions, when you're not driving fast, but you have, for example, muddy conditions or rain or ice or snow, then it's a drawback, because you're driving not that fast and there's little weight on the wheels that are being driven, while there's a lot of weight on the front wheel drive cars, because the engine is sitting on top of the front wheels even when the car is stagnant, so it's just sitting there. So you have direct traction, and that's beneficial. Also, you will remove all those other factors, and the Hothatch needs to be playful. And to have, for example, the 130i that has similar interior space than this, it has a drawback that it has 30% about more weight, and you cannot solve 30% more weight in the playfulness or how direct the car will be by just having rear wheel drive. And you could say, okay, then just get an engine with less horsepower and rear wheel drive. You could do that, but then you will lose a lot. The parasitic loss is especially there when you don't have that much power. So the less power you have, you will have a higher relative issue with the parasitic loss. So that's something to take into consideration. So it's better to have a little bit more power, like the 3-liter 6-cylinder, than with a smaller engine. So that's are some things to take into consideration, which really makes the front wheel drive car the best option in my opinion. A Hothatch does not need to have enormous amount of power. It needs to be playful, it needs to be light, it needs to be capable, that you have a practical use, that you still can seat a lot of people. Also to have that hatchback folding capacity, that you have a lot of interior room to take with you stuff. And it needs to be accessible also, that you can use it every time, also in the less perfect conditions, traction for example, but also that it's not that costly, and that all those complexity in introducing factors will have a detrimental effect on the CO2, for example the fuel consumption, which also are directed in taxes that we have in the Netherlands, but also might be other places. Also road tax is based on weight, that also adds. Also if your insurance is based on weight, it also adds to that. And you need a bigger engine and more other things to still make it playful. If it's heavier to begin with, you need a bigger engine to have the same power to weight. If you are losing more, you need a bigger engine to still have the same power to the wheels. If you have a bigger and heavier car, because you don't have you have the intrusion, and you have to make up for that with a bigger car to begin with, you have more weight. If you have a longer bonnet, because the motor needs to sit in that direction, you have more weight and less compact, so less playful. Also, if you have all those components, you need also have bigger brakes, you have the same braking distance, you have to have bigger axles for all that power to deal with, you have to have wider tires for the traction, etc, etc. And it all adds up to the weight and weight and weight. And a pure lightweight car, Hothatch, is therefore not that much accessible. Then the last component, four-wheel drive car. Those have the traction, they have the bonnet and the engine displacement in there, the same as front-wheel drive cars, so no much overhang. And then they have also an axle that goes through, like the rear-wheel drive cars, that transfers the power also to the back. In that way you have the most parasitic loss and then less fuel mileage, so to say, in that configuration, but you have the best traction. Also the weight will be the highest, of course, with all the complexities, the most complex system. You have driving axles on both sides now, but you have, especially with a lot of horsepower, so for example even the Yaris GR, but especially over 300 horsepower, because Civic Type R still deals with it, over 300 horsepower with front wheel drive. But then all-wheel drive is the best, and at this time they also have a very special version, so they have a Hothatch coupling, for example in the Volkswagen Audi group, that they have front-wheel drive even in the Golf R as standard, and the RS3 of Audi, and only if needed it also transfers power to the rear. So you have a little bit less parasitic loss that way, because you only have the parasitic loss to a very small degree going to the back wheels, and the extra complexity therein, that you have that diversion, that it goes both, it has the option to both go to the rear and to the front wheels, and of course the added weight, etc, that comes with the system. But it's still quite limited, still very good system, but still you have the intrusion here of that axle and the added complexity. But with hyper hatches, all-wheel drive is the way to go. All-wheel drive is really the way to go. If you have a lot of power, or even if you want to tune it, this will give you the best acceleration all the time, and will cover also the distance the best all the time. And still a very capable, nimble chassis, because you can have the overhang so little. That being said, if you have all those factors there, so especially if you go for 400, 500 horsepower to tune, all-wheel drive, really appreciate it. That's the best way ever. If you take all those things into consideration, and even the Lancer Delta Integrale, which has a legendary status, 186 horsepower, all-wheel drive, was a very nice Hothatch. But even if you take that into consideration, it is not the Hothatch that you will hear people the most about. Those are the all front-wheel drive cars. Also Clio V6, you will not hear them. 130i. Sometimes people will, who are purists and wants to be pushed instead of pulled, will name them. But most are naming the Peugeots. 205 GTI, 205 Rally, 106 GTI, 106 Rally, 306 GTI, 306 Rally, Clio Williams, Clio RS, not the V6 one, but 172, 182, or even the modern iteration, Megane gas, also, and the turbo derivative there. And why is that the case? Because those cars are light, nimble, accessible, and fun. And that's what a Hothatch is all about. You have a practical package that you can use for everyday life, and still will turn your face into smiling galore every time you will drive it. And it's very light, the lightest and the most practical form, and also the cheapest, most accessible, so the enthusiast can just afford it. What do you have in your bedroom, on the walls of your bedroom? Perhaps an exotic car like a Ferrari or Lamborghini, but how many percentage of the people will get to that? For me, it was always the Hothatches, because that's something that's accessible to me, and I really can drive myself. What is there to chase a dream that you will never really chase? Because if you do that, you can get a Lamborghini or Ferrari, but then you perhaps will live in a shed, or you will be worried every time you park it somewhere. With a Hothatch you can just park it wherever you want, because it's not that expensive, it's still accessible. And you can seat up to 5 people. You can take your family with you. Try to do that with your Ferrari or a Lamborghini, if it's not a Urus. That will be very, very hard. You have to drive the same distance over and over again to take one passenger with you. But all jokes aside, that's making it so special. And all things being said, this is also why I want a Hothatch like this, and I chose the one not with the most power like the Fiesta ST for this B segment. If you want a compact light car, B segment, Fiesta ST, i20N or Polo GTI would all be more powerful, but this is the lightest by 30-35%, and that's where it's at for me. Even if it's 10 to 20%, I will still look favorable on the lighter hatchback, and that's something to take into consideration. Also for you enthusiasts, the light, simple nature, and this comes fully loaded, makes it accessible, makes it fun, makes it practical, makes it an everyday type of car that you can really enjoy. Foundering car, out. So this foundering car is all about priorities. So priorities in life. If you see life as a piece of cake, piece of pie, then you have your partitions. What makes the total pie? And some partitions might be your health, your family time, your hobbies, but a lot of that is also sleep and especially work. And there might be a balance and a disruption in balance. So for example, if work invades too much, then your health will suffer, your family life will suffer, your sleep will suffer. At least one of those will suffer, right? And I'm now driving to a friend of mine with a double pneumonia, and his life was going down and down. So was life, how do you say that in proper English? It was a direct attack on his life at a moment, but now he's gaining again. But also it goes like a wave. Sometimes you gain a little bit, and then you have a little bit of setback, and then you gain a little bit, etc. But he's going up, so very happy with that. But I'm now visiting him, and it is a travel of 300 kilometers plus for me. Still in the Netherlands, but the extremities of the Netherlands. But what is more important? That you save some hours, save some gas, save some time, or that you are there for your friend. A good friend at that. For me the answer is simple. And if we are not going to meet, of course you can still be friends, but it's also good that when the time of dire need, or time of suffering, or whatever, or also pleasure like the wedding, that your good friends are there, that you can enjoy or suffer together. That makes you a group, a posse, and that makes you a strong person. It also shows your reputation, that people are coming to you, and their love will reignite that fire and will help you heal again. But also the other way around, that you are willing to sacrifice time and effort and means to visit your friend, your brother, or whatever. You're there for them. That shows your character. Are you there only for your own convenience, your own ego trip, or are you there to do something, to serve and protect and help? That makes you a good person. In the end of time, when you are laying down on your deathbed, you're not thinking about, oh, I did something to prove my ego again. Whatever. You will remember the things that made you the person that everyone loves. And they are also there for you then. And you will feel that love, but you also know that you did what you could. Or at least you did a lot what you could. And you cannot do everything all the time. That's something that you also have to learn. I also have to learn that. But try to do what you can. And if you do so, it will make you a beautiful person, a good friend, a real brother, and a positive influence in the lives of others. And if you do not do that, and for example you put your career on top of your friendship all the time, you will hollow out that friendships. And then you will say, okay, I'm glad that I did that for my career, but because look at now, those supposed to be friends are not there for me now. Of course not. You were not there for them either. To get good friendships, to attract good friends, be a good friend yourself. Be that brother that you want to have in your life when the shit hits the fan. Be that brother that you want in your life to celebrate. That's the thing that you should really embrace. And that means that you have to look after yourself. What are your core principles? I now told you about friendship, brothership, etc. Brotherhood, if you want to say, or soldiers. Also the Spartan soldiers or the Roman soldiers, they had the shields, the wall of shields. It's only that strong because they all had the shields. So they are a brotherhood. Instead of you have one shield and then you could still be stabbed from the side or from the top or whatever. But that connection, that wall of shields, that make it strong, that they all do it. They put the group in front of themselves. That's one thing, that core values, but also if you watch over your health, have a good discipline, are not there to just feel luxury and comfort, but you embrace also the hardship that makes you stronger person, better person. And it also makes you better suited against influence from the outside. For example, the pneumonia. If your health is very good, you have a very good condition, you have a bigger chance and bigger resistance to deal with those influences than when you're already soaked into comfort and you're not as strong. To begin with, water to purify your system, to let your kidneys dilute all the contaminants in your bloodstream, to soak it out and then get rid of it instead of keep it in your kidneys. You need fluid to work that. I'm now sitting behind the vegan RS, a bubble butt. Enthusiasts will know what I mean. It's really that curved butt. I didn't like it at first, but it's a special type of car. It also gives you a little bit more of a trunk, of course. But that being said, that's one thing. Also, family. Be there for your friends, be there for your wife, be there for your children. You can offer your assistance, you can offer your presence and friendship. If they don't take it, that's their choice. And they might really revolve their thinking in a time. If your children mature, especially when they hit puberty, they try to be self-sufficient and independent. Of course, that's a phase. But later they will reminisce and think back. You know what my father did? You know what kind of people my father involved in my life? What kind of personality? What lessons he taught me? Yeah. What was the example that he showed? What did he do himself? Did he just preach it, or did he also practice it? It's important also for your wife. Even if she's not aligned with your choices, but she knows you make those choices in the benefit not of your person, your ego, but of the family. Also the benefits of her. You want to protect the family and serve it. It will put a lot of respect in her brain. And it will help her to love that type of man. People don't love a weak husband. Not to the degree that they would love a strong husband. Even if all the other things are the same, they will love the strong person. And they will look up to it. And women need a husband to look up to. So be that guy. And be strong. Show what you can do. If you cannot do it, okay. But if you can, do it. Just do it. Try to get as much of good things in your life as possible. And show that example. Also, if you sleep, and you sleep right and you have a good rest, that's better than you looking at scrolling down your tablet or your phone or whatever. All that blue light will interfere with your with your sleep. And of course you have a red light filter that only elucidates red lights and filters out all that blue light. And evening program app, that's a good thing to have on your telephone. But also still it is there, all those impressions, instead of making you relax. It's different when you read a book, for example, or have a talk with your wife or your children. It's different interaction. I hope this short video helped. Wishing you a great day. Found my car, out. So you're young and you're looking for your first car. What to get? A roadster? A coupe? Or a Hothatch? Let's do the rundown. An example of a roadster would be a Mazda MX-5, also known as the Miata or the Ernest Roadster. An example of coupe would be Fiat Coupe, or Audi TT, or Celica. And example for Hothatch is, for example, this Suzuki Swift Sports that I'm driving currently, but also think about Golf GTI, Fiesta SD and the likes. So first off, let's start with the least practical, the Roadster. So if practical room is not your concern, also 2 passengers is not your concern, you only have 1 passenger, for example your girlfriend or your wife, and you don't have kids, this is a very nice car to start with. It brings that all the feelings from outside, takes them directly to your skin. So for example, you will feel the wind blowing through your hair. You will also feel the sun shining on you if the roof is opened. And it is a very, very nice starting point in sport car territory. So you get a lot of the feelings and excitement of a sports car without the cost. Mazda MX-5 is the poster child of this class. Very good rear wheel drive, double wishbone, not too heavy, very reliable and mass produced. So you have a lot of examples to choose from. Other great examples are Mazda, I already mentioned the Mazda, but another great example would be the MGF with a 1.8 liter, the same as in the Elise, but a lot less costly. You could also go for Elise, but for example convertibles of bigger sports car, but those are quite costly. So I'm making it in the entry level sports car, your first car. But the MGF was surprisingly cheap, also second hand. The K series engine that they have is quite reliable if you don't blow the head gaskets. You can also replace the head gaskets, and a lot of those are already fixed for you. So then they are quite safe to get. Celica, no, we were still on the Roadster. But also Barchetta of Fiat, it's like a Punto stretched, and made Roadster a very nice car. And also you have now the 124 Spider by Fiat, which is a nephew with a 1.4 liter turbo engine of the nephew of the Mazda MX-5. Other great example that I actually bought myself, and it also bridged that between Roadster and Coupe, is the Hothatch Coupe. Why? It is about 20% lighter than the Mazda MX-5, but offers an all-electric aluminium roof that's electrically being opened or closed. So you have a coupe if it's closed, and you have a Roadster if it's opened. And also it is an extremely stiff type of Roadster, because they have stiffened the car at the underside, which has not been done with Mazda MX-5. So a very stiff car, which is lighter and will give you a lot less cost and all year applicability, because it has a metal roof instead of a cloth fabric roof. So a great recommendation there. You have to take into consideration that there are 2 versions. One is with the Japanese spec engine, so 0.6, 0.7 liter engine with a turbo, which is quite worrisome, because it needs a lot of service intervals, because the service intervals are short and it's not as reliable as the second generation, the second version, a Euro spec one, which has a steering wheel on the right side. the Japanese spec one has it on the right side, even if it was delivered, for example, to European countries like the Netherlands. But that with the steering wheel on the left side is great, because that makes it a true European feeling, and without any drawbacks of JDM life type of car. And it comes with double the engine capacity without the turbo. It's very, very reliable. The same engine is used in Sirion 2 and the Yaris, for example, and they are proven to be very reliable little engines. And they also offer more horsepower and more torque than the turbocharged version. So a very nice car to have, and that's also the version I have. So bridging that between Roadster and Coupe. Coupe sits between the Hothatch and the Roadster, in my opinion. And why is that? It is really splendid to look at. If you, for example, look at the Pininfarina made and designed Fiat Coupe, that's a beauty. It looks like a mini Ferrari, in my opinion. So a great recommendation there. Also, engines are very nice. They come with 1.8, 2 liter, 2 liter. Comes in two tastes, 2 liter with 4 cylinders and 16 valves, and a 2 liter with 5 cylinders and 20 valves. And both also come as naturally aspirated, and the turbo 2 liter 20 valve version is with the turbo is the one to get in performance, about 227 horsepower. That's and a great amount of torque. That's the one to strive for. But even that without a turbo is a nice car. So there are things to take into consideration. 5-cylinder engine is also quite special next to that exterior. Other very good coupe would be the Audi TT, and especially second generation. Why is that? The first generation, of course, is the most iconic, but it is just VW Golf made into a coupe, and therefore often also very heavy, so sometimes even heavier than the Golf. Whereas the second generation onwards, they made it more real sports car, so more aluminium is used than in the Golf, and then you get a lighter car which is a little bit more roomier, and that was also the version my wife had. Really recommendation there would be either to get a 2 liter turbo, which is in its essence the same lump as in the Golf GTI, or if you want to go berserk, the 2.3 liter the 3.2 liter, sorry, VR6, same as in the Golf R, but with at least 250 horsepower. Well, the Golf R started with 231 horsepower, the Golf 5 iteration, the Golf 4 iteration. Other thing to consider is that the 2 liter turbo comes also as a variety with which is called the DTS, and that has the same engine as Audi S3, and it's a very good engine also to tune. So it could give you plenty of power, and also comes with 4-wheel drive. So something to take into consideration if you want to build a very fast car. So you want to do a lot of tuning and performance increases there. If you're not going to tune it, the lighter front-wheel drive car might be even nicer to have. A little bit less horsepower, but with the tune it has similar horsepower than the S Stage 1 tune, and a little bit more torque, and it is lighter of course on its feet, so that's a nice thing to consider. Other great cars, Toyota Celica TT, nice little car, made lighter than its predecessor, which is a great compliment, and quite reliable. The 1.8 is not always as reliable, so that's quite a weak point for Toyota. Normally they are extremely reliable, but MR2 and the Celica are plagued by some issues with this engine, and even that made together with Yamaha for the T-Sports Celica is still not as strong. A very reliable coupe you could find with the Honda Integra, which is like a Civic Type R, but then in coupe form, a little bit lighter, a little bit more stiff. So it could be a very nice candidate, better than the other ones in performance numbers, especially if you want to do track days and you want the performance and reliability. But the performance, the TT S would be very good, but also the Fiat Coupe with the 20 volt turbo lump is a force to be reckoned with. And more costly coupes like 911 or Gran Turismo or XK versions are often too costly to consider, in my opinion, so I just left them out. Hope you can appreciate that. Then the end is here. Hothatches. Why a hothatch? A hothatch offers the performance of a coupe in a low profile type of car, so it doesn't scream that much. I'm a hothatch oftentimes. Also, a lot of people will not find them as special as, for example, a roadster or coupe. Especially a lot of girls don't understand that the hothatch can be a very capable tool, but it has seats up to 5 persons. Celica and Fiat Coupe seats 4 persons quite well, but a hothatch like this Suzuki Swiss Sport seats up to 5 people, and as that hatch, the bigger hatch gives you a lot more room. If you fold down the seats, you can put in quite big items and just carry them. Almost everything can be carried. And if you want to have something like that, you can also consider a power station like Octavia Combi RS, which is like an extended Golf GTI, but then with the in-station wagon form. A little bit less fun in the chuckability because it's heavier and longer, etc., but a lot more room to consider. So there are things to consider here, and for me the hothatch is the best compromise. So it offers performance, it offers practicality, unlike all the others, bar the Powerstation, which is of course even more practical. It's chuckable, it's nice, it does not, it's quite affordable, more affordable than the others oftentimes, and it does not cost the world to maintain. So you have something that can do it all and make you smile, and that's what we want to see, that we all have a lot of pleasure with the cars we love. And if you want to go with one of the others, for example the Roadster or the Coupe, go and do your thing. That is a more special type of car to consider, but the hothatch for me, that's why I prefer it the most of all these types, is the car that has another sort of specialty, and that it has the performance and the practicality down to a T. So you have a car that's very special because it can combine both of those qualities, so to say. And also because it will draw a little bit less attention. This is also for me a benefit, a more sleeper type of car. But to each his or her own. But that's my take on it. Boundary car out.